You're listening to the Kin to Kin podcast, where we nurture the journey of Black students by sharing stories of those who have walked the halls before them. We aim to bring change through the sharing of our lived experiences. I am your host, Dr. Kimberly Broughton. Welcome and welcome back to the Kin to Kin podcast. I am Dr. Kimberly Broughton, and today we will be hearing the story of an amazing young lady by the name of Miss Mahalia Sam-Clarke. So Mrs. Mahalia is a biology teacher, the wife of Eric, and a mother of a 2-year-old daughter named Nayomi. She has been married for almost 10 years and loves her family. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me and for showing interest and sharing your experience with pursuing higher education. As you know, there still remains to be a gap between recruiting Black students and actually having the means of retaining them. And so that's why our conversation today is very important and holds a lot of value to both current students and incoming Black students. And we know that the Black student experience is not monolithic. And so hearing everyone's perspective as much as possible is really vital. All right, so I'm ready to hop into today's conversation. But before we get started, I actually have a quick game that we're going to play called Cultural Tags. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
Okay, so I'm going to give a brief overview. So Culture Tags is a Black-owned game by a lady named Unique Jones Gibson. And so basically you were guessed a popular saying based off of acronyms. And so these phrases come from like Black Twitter or the Black church or 90s music, different topics, right? But they're popular sayings like within social media in general. And so I will show you an acronym, and we're only going to do one. And between the both of us, we will have 30 seconds for you to guess what the acronym stands for. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so in
Exciting.
about 5 seconds, the acronym will show up. And for those listening, I will read the letters out loud, and then I'll start giving hints. All right? So again, we only have about 30 seconds, and no pressure, okay? No pressure. All right, so the letters are KTSE. So this saying means like don't switch things up later on. The way you're acting now, make sure you continue to act that way. Or another way to say it is like, remember that, like if you're treating me this way now, don't act differently later on. Or if this is what you're advocating for now, make sure you're committed to that. Any guesses?
Keep that same energy.
That same energy. Good. Keep that same energy. I love it. Okay. And so today we're going to keep that same energy. We're going to continue to share the stories of current and former Black students in hopes of paving the way of a more holistic approach to including students, Black students specifically, in higher education. And so that's why I have you here today, Mahalia. I want you to get started with giving us a brief overview of the narrative that surrounded higher education for you growing up. What was that like?
So I went to a HBCU, as you know, Paine College in Augusta, Georgia. I'm very proud of that. That experience helped me to grow as a person, and it helped me figure out who I was at that time and at that moment. But as my journey continued, I went to Claflin University, where I became very cultural oriented, and I learned that I wanted to be a teacher, an educator. And that, I ran from that for years until I had that experience at Claflin. And so I had decided that, okay, it's time for me to venture out and, go get this higher degree. So I went to Penn State, and one of their branch campuses, I feel comfortable telling you that, in Harrisburg, PA. And I had a different, I was culture struck, shall I say, because it was a different environment. However, I wanted to pursue higher education. So I ventured out, found another program and I went to Mahalia University. So that's where I got my education degree. And from that point, I knew, hey, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do.
Hmm. Okay. So you mentioned that you started out at Paine College in Georgia, then Claflin. How early were you aware of the different type of colleges that were available to you?
I think when I got to Claflin, that's where I was really exposed. I didn't never heard of Claflin University. And when I got there, I felt like, wow, like I probably would go here first, but because it was just when I got to Claflin, I think that's when I had the real, for me, a real college experience because I was out of the city. I was in a totally different city doing something totally different. So I felt like I belong. I felt like I fit in that type of narrative versus being in the college where I knew everybody and being in the city where I knew everybody versus coming to a different state and not knowing anyone and kind of basically building relationships. So that was really crucial for me.
Okay, I want to backtrack a little bit because you talk about how you enjoyed Claflin and you wish you started there. What was your high school structure like in terms of college preparation? Do you feel like they prepared you enough to even start the college application process?
Now, that's interesting because yes, well, yes and no. You had for me, you have to be self motivated. And because I was a self motivated student, I searched out where I wanted to go to school. Like I knew, okay, I want to go to medical field. I didn't have anybody that was closest to me that was in the medical field, but I had this beautiful, wonderful, impactful chemistry teacher that she had such a strong impact on students that she was the reason for me actually wanting to go into education. So that's really where that began, for me having that passion. But when I got to college, that all changed. We wanted to go to medical school, was my focus. So I didn't really have a whole lot of guidance, but my father did encourage me to go to college. So I started like seeking that out on my own. But the only person that I could remember that just had my back from day one was my favorite mentor, Dr. G. I think she was it for me. So our school was predominantly Black, and yes, they encouraged and they pushed that, and we had counselors that cared about us and made sure we were going to college. However, it was really up to us to condition ourselves to say, okay, this is the path we want to go, and this is how we want to do it.
Okay, elaborate a little bit about your relationship with your chemistry teacher. What was that dynamic like?
Oh man, she she cared about the students. um After I graduated, I kept up with her forever. Like she was like I stuck to her like glue. She's from Charleston, South Carolina. So when I moved to South Carolina to go to Claflin, she was kind of like a mom to me. Like she was my family. And we became very close. And she always just encouraged me when, I've ever had struggles. Like my dad, she would always encourage me, like, keep going. This is the avenue you should take. This is what you should be doing. And that just really kept me grounded as a person, and on the right track.
Okay, so because you had that experience so early on, did that shape your expectations of your college professors? Like, did you
Yes,
expect
indeed.
them to behave
That was
and
number
treat you the
one. I thought when I went to college, oh, I'm gonna have somebody just like Dr. G,
same?
that cares, that wants to do. And then when I got to college, it was a little different than that. Yes, you had some professors that cared, but then you had some that they didn't think I was prepared. And they told me, hey, I had a professor say to me, you might want to do something else, but it wasn't what she said, it was how she said that to me. And that discouraged me, and it made me very upset, but it also made me work harder to prove that I am ready to go to the medical field. And I'm ready to do whatever, and I can do anything I want to. And I really also perceive some of the professors as just looking at some of our students as that they just weren't prepared because they didn't go to that school, or they didn't have some of the experiences, but there weren't many opportunities. We had to fight to find those opportunities.
Mhm.
And, I understand like being on a campus, like that was something like if you want to do it, you have to go get it. But sometimes, having that information or being given that information is useful too. And I just kind of felt like when it came to certain opportunities, I was sort of out of the loop. I kept finding myself trying to find these opportunities on my own because it wasn't, I had to seek it out. It wasn't just given to me. Or like there, like, hey, you want to go to medical field, so you should take the MCAT and you should get into this. It wasn't that. And even I had a friend, he went to the medical college right across from the school. It was hard for him to get in because, for whatever reasons, when it came to people of color, their admissions was not really trying to help those students and was giving them the runaround. And that wasn't really a great experience. And so I was like, what is this? What is going to be like for me? And that kind of discouraged me along with what that professor was.
Okay, so from the perspective of a student, but also currently a teacher, what would you have changed in regards of the structure of how they communicated with their students and presented them with opportunities? What would you have suggested that they've done?
Do internships, right? Like there are massive ones for the sciences in STEM. I would have encouraged them to go into STEM because not most of our most of our students aren't encouraged to do that because of grades. And I think that is all based off of merit, and I understand that part. However, if you get in and you work hard and you get a good mentor that is willing to help shape your mind, you can go places. And to be a prime example of that, that's what happened when I got to Claflin. I knew nothing about research, but I love science. And so I was being encouraged by my mentor to do science in a different way. But you have to have that mindset. And I think the mindset is different from when you transition from college to when you go to grad school. It's like it's expected. Why wouldn't I expect that? I'm here to get an education and I'm teachable and I love to learn. So why wouldn't I want to encourage that? And I just really didn't see that from some of the professors. It was kind of the attitude of, well, I have my degree and I have what I have. You need to get yours. And I am, but can you help me in my journey? It's not easy for everyone. And some of our students, especially our students of color, they need that encouragement sometimes because they come from different backgrounds where they don't have a Dr. G. And we expect that when people come from certain backgrounds or some certain areas that they have certain things that they're equipped, and that's not always the case.
Mhm. So you talked a lot about your experience at Claflin, which we love Claflin, right? I also went
Yeah.
to Claflin. Did you notice a difference between your interactions with the professors at Claflin versus your interaction with your professors at maybe Penn or Messiah University? And what was that difference?
The difference was the professors were very connected. They knew the students they were teaching. So they didn't have, I wouldn't say they didn't have high expectations. They just had certain things in place to support those students because they knew, okay, these students, they may or may not have this specific background, but that's okay. We'll teach. And that's what I love. It was just like not expecting you to know 1,000 things. I'm just expecting you to be able to be taught and be able to take this and learn more. And so when I got to Penn State, that culture changed for me. It was just like, oh, you come from this school, but it's not really a research school, and it made me feel some way. It made me feel like, well, what is it? What do you mean it's not a research school? Well, it's not high enough for you. Why? Because I don't have all these skill sets. Well, maybe I should have done other things prior to going into Penn State, but I'm already here. You've already accepted me into your program. Why would it be any different? Why couldn't I just get a mentor that would teach me more research skills and then me find a interest and continue my matriculation? Well, that wasn't the mindset. The mindset was, well, you don't have a strong enough anything. We thought you had this part, but this part is not really strong enough to sustain. And it made me feel like I didn't fit their dynamic with their students, because then all of the students started to treat me a little different too. They were like, oh, well, she went to that school, she didn't really go to Penn State. So so that made me feel, well, just because I didn't go to Penn State don't mean that I don't have skills. So I felt like I had to show them what I was made of. And I was tired of doing that. I did that for 10 years, trying to show people what Mahalia is made of. So I decided, I'm not going to do that. And I said, okay, I'll master out. I'll do something that I really, truly want to do because I don't want to be in research for 8 years anyway. I want a family and all those things. So I shift gears. It was the best thing I ever did.
Did your relationships with your professors at your other institutions outside of Claflin, did those relationships eventually evolve into something positive?
Yes, because I demanded respect.
Mm.
It was, I know I might not be that the Ivy League, right? But I am a person. And how you treat people is just as crucially as important as what you're trying to teach them or give them. And so I think once I started demanding my respect, like when I got to Messiah and I was being forced to change my topic, I said, no, I will not. This is my passion. This is a problem. And I'm going to fight for that. And I think once I started standing my ground, people started to respect me at that point. Like, okay, Mahalia, she knows what she's going to do. And when I have my mind set, you can't like deter me. So I think when that happened, I started to see a lot of people shift. So I was studying teachers of color in education and their attrition and retention rate in public school. And I was studying that because at the time in the school that I was at, it's a also more diverse school. It had become more diverse over the years, and I started thinking about, I'm having a hard time getting my foot in the door. Why is that? And then when I got into education, I started to see, well, people of color are just looked at as a holding place and not as a skill setter and have obtained degrees and they're not being respected the same as their white counterparts. And I said, I'm gonna do research on this to see really does this hold because we're not going to the same institutions where they think that we get the correct rigor, or is it because they feel like we just haven't been exposed enough to be into this profession? And when I got into that, I found out that that's not the case. We're very underpaid, we're overlooked, we're disrespected in terms of our education background, and that's not really fair. It's different from holding a number and saying, hey, Mahalia, I want you to do this because you have a science background and you did these wonderful things. Like I published at Penn State and it just flew over some of my colleagues' head like, oh, she thinks she's better because she published. No, I don't. I think that as a person, you don't know what I had to go through to get that, to earn that, to be that. And every degree I've earned, it wasn't just given to me. I had to work for that. And I don't think that people look at that equally to some of our peers. And I don't think that that's fair. And it seems sometimes when a woman of color is in some type of position and we're leading, that's infuriating to some people. And I don't know why that would be infuriating. That should empower you as a person and as a woman to say, yeah, I want to do this. I'm driven to do this. But sometimes I don't think that that's looked at that way. It's looked at a little differently.
What were some of the factors you considered when you applied to Penn State and Messiah University? Because having come from Claflin and even Paine College, you kind of had an idea of what you wanted out of an institution, right? So
Sure.
what were some of the things you were looking for going into these institutions that were, in a sense, drastically different from the HBCUs you came from?
Well, I was looking to culturally adapt, like, be exposed to people that I've never been exposed to, build and form relationships with people that I didn't know, because I actually learned that from Claflin, like how important it is to, no matter where you're from or your background, to build relationships, right? That's what I was looking for. And to be openly accepted as I accepted other people, not to be looked at as, oh, you're an outsider.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I might be, but I'm a person.
Right. So you were hoping that going into a more culturally diverse area that would expand your horizons overall,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So when you were at these other institutions, did you participate in any social organizations or clubs?
Yes, I was. Well, anytime they had events, I was participating in those. Going to a lot of the galas, and one of them was multicultural galas that they had at the institution's campus, and also venturing out to other people, like trying to hang with some of my colleagues. Just to kind of learn their culture, more Asian than anything, so they would speak their Mandarin and all of that. But I wanted to have the exposure and be a part. And when I was a part of those things, I felt like I was more a part of people who look like me versus the other groups of individuals that are significantly different, that just I just didn't have nothing in common with. So I didn't really click with them because I didn't have anything in common with them. And so then I started to think maybe I should have been more exposed to different, like more diverse people instead of just all, of course, people of color. But we have so much rich culture that regardless of who I'm exposed to, I should have been able to adapt to anyone and be, just be a part. But it was very, very different.
Mm. Do you think your participation in these like social activities impacted your overall experience in graduate school?
Yes, it did. I feel like I felt when I was participating in those things, I was finding out more about who I was as a person.
Mhm.
And it started to make me think, maybe these are some things, some other things they could do, but I didn't know who to share the things with to kind of make them think, okay, when you have students that come to your school, maybe these are some other things that you can have, or other events you can have, just so that everybody can be openly accepted to like my culture and who I am too. I just only saw one part of it, but I wanted to see both parts. And the school has struggled with that, like trying to make sure. I think the only, even with the medical students, the only reason why they even started having events and things, because students start to say, hey, I don't feel like I'm a part here. And I had one other friend who felt that she was being treated very unfairly in the program, and not treated like she knew anything. And she really had a tough time. So me and her kind of clicked together. I had to make a community for myself to find support. And so she was my support person. And she kept saying to me, don't ever change, and that's how I started going to the events, because she kind of pulled me in, like, hey, I'm having this, hey, trying to keep me strong, to not like wavering and saying, I'm like, I give up on this. I want to do something else.
Mhm. Speaking of community, I know that Claflin and Messiah are both Christian institutions. Did that have any bearing on your experience coming into it? Like, did you have a religious background, and did that help
Yes.
going to institutions that also had that?
Yes, it did. Messiah very heavy on Christianity and accepting people. And so that's why I thought, well, this is perfect. It's a private institution. Of course, it's more expensive. But that was like more my stumping grounds, because even Paine College was built off of the premises of ministers that came together, that had a endowment that wanted to support, you know, people of color, and it was very strong on that, because we had to go to chapel every Wednesday. So, I was up in there, but I feel that helped me through some of my tough times, where I didn't feel like, imposter syndrome kind of set in, and I didn't feel like I could make it. So it was hard, but I got through it.
What are you doing differently, or even similar to your experience, to help your Black students?
Currently now, I'm encouraging them not just to go to college, but to seek out other things that they are very interested in, and find those what we call free opportunities to do them. So I've been working with the career center at my school, because we, it's kind of a little low level. Nobody's not really taking over it, and so I start sending scholarships and programs and things to those counselors to give to students that are about to graduate and or that are interested in the sciences. And I'm also pushing Claflin, like I mentioned Claflin, because I did graduate from there, and I have a young lady who applied to South Carolina State. But hey, it's in the ballpark. But I was excited, because they get to get so many opportunities by applying. I told them about USCF. I have a friend just got her doctorate, and she's now like one of the directors. So I'm just trying to kind of feed into my students Like, yes, I'm a role model to them, but I don't want them to think that this life is easy. I want them to know you might have some obstacles and some things to bear, but these are how you fight, right? This is what you need. You need to get an education so you can still climb over those obstacles and become all that you can be. But in doing that, make sure that you get yourself equipped with all of the different experiences with other people before you decide to go off to school or do anything else. Because I think that's utterly important for them to be well rounded and in their environment. And I push that for my students every day because I want them to be the best.
Yeah, I think a lot of people still don't understand why diversity and inclusion efforts are still a thing. Like, why are we still talking about this? Do
Sure.
you see that your Black students are still struggling with some things because they are marginalized or minority? And can you share what some of those struggles are so people know that this is still current and relevant?
Sure. So one of the struggles is having finances. Like, we don't come from a place of money. And we just got finished talking about this the other day. Sometimes people treat our students like they come from these very enriched backgrounds, and these kids don't, and some of them don't know what they really struggle with. They don't have the people skills. They don't have the relationship and connective skills, and they really often struggle with that because they've only lived in Harrisburg, right? They never really left and went somewhere else and had an experience. Some of the kids have never traveled. Some of the kids, they can't afford to have to go to Europe or go to any of the other like countries. I started at Claflin, I started traveling a lot to get these experiences, right? But our children don't have that, and some argue, well, they don't have to have, like, you don't have to go anywhere like extravagant, but some of our kids, they could really benefit from summer programs, and they could benefit from going to some STEM programs and going and learning about other schools that offer these programs that they can also be a part of. But I think one of the biggest issues too is sometimes when we encourage kids to like do that, they go there and they don't have the same experience as we have. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like they get there, but they're not sustaining. They're not being retained. And so the question is, why are you going? Why, you did so well here. Why, when you go somewhere else, you're not focusing, you're not being retained? Well, they never learned how to do that because of the system that we're teaching them in, right? And it's all these things are all assumptions. Like, we need intense training, and I just got finished talking to a friend about this yesterday. We need the intense training about what diversity means and what, again, because every time we get teachers coming in, there's a wall there. They have a different mindset. And I'm not to say it's wrong, but it doesn't quite fit the student population we're teaching. And it's like you can come in and say, well, they should already know how to do X, 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 X. Well, look at what school they went to. They didn't do that. So there's a gap, right? There's a gap between middle school when they transition to high school. And we have to, as teachers, we have to fill that gap. But we have to know what our students are struggling with. So we need data to figure out what are our students struggling with and why aren't they being or matriculating through our schools. And no one is looking at that. It's all just like pushing them to the side and saying, well, they're bad, or they have these problems, but the children are struggling with these things because they don't have anyone to really truly sit down and help them. Even if you came from a good parent home, you could still have struggles mentally. You never know. And that even is such a stigma between people of color, like being embarrassed about that. Even now, even after COVID, it's like it's okay to struggle.
Right.
But we shouldn't be struggling. Our kids shouldn't be struggling so hard. Not at this stage in their life. At this stage, this is like high school is supposed to be the best time of their lives. And that's kind of how I visualized Friday when I left school, when the kids were just acting, wild. Like they're at the height of their life. They should be experiencing all things, but it shouldn't be Oh, because you don't have the money for the tutoring to pass the ACTs, or you don't have the money for the tutoring for the Keystone. I would tutor a child for free if it meant that they had all of what they needed to be successful. Why is everything ruled around money? You know?
What practical steps do you have for teachers who want to become better advocates for Black students?
One of the things is be their mentor. Check in with them from time to time. Find out what they're interested in doing so
Mhm.
that you can get the right people in line, right resources to better help them. And then kind of put those kids in connection with folks that are going the same place that they want to go. Sometimes having a person that has already done it, that has already been there, is crucial. And that's what I looked out yesterday for a friend to just kind of help me. It's a process I want to go through, and I wanted them to kind of be a support to me, but I had to sort them out. Like that again, if you want to be a teacher, or if you want to be an engineer or a doctor, you have to sort those people out who have already gone through that journey so that you can find out what the ins and outs of it is. Because sometimes when you embark on something that you truly want to do, you don't quite know what it really takes, and you don't find the right people. And so you don't successfully execute because you don't have the right people in front of you supporting you. So for any teacher, if I was to mentor them or give advice to them about how to administer to our students, pour straight into them because they're young. Their brains are like sponges. They'll be able to grasp what you're trying to tell them now and keep talking to them all the way until they graduate.
What practical steps would you give to students who actually desire to build a relationship with their professors? Because we know that professors play a crucial role in their experience overall, right? So, what would
Mhm.
you say to students? What are some practical steps they can take to actually start building a relationship with their teacher or professor?
Go to their classes. Say, hey, do you have time to talk? I'm interested in going to this field or profession. Do you know anybody? Like go seek those people out. Go find them, especially the veteran teachers are perfect. Like I go and visit them all the time because they are like the people who have so much rich information that can encourage. And so I would encourage any young person, any student, hey, if you know somebody you really trust and you're connected with, go talk to them. They wanna they I know somebody that love to talk to kids. Like for real. Like he just loves to talk and he's filled with so much information. I would tell that student, go talk to him, strike a topic, find out, like pick his brain, find out what he knows, because that's the best thing that you can do. That's how that's how you build relationships.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing your experience, for giving your wisdom to students and professors and anyone that's in educational agencies, because I don't think this is limited to higher education, right? Diversity and inclusion is widespread through many industries. And so I think your perspective is really going to give them insight on to like how to move forward with advocating for Black people, advocating for Black
Mhm.
students, and creating spaces for them to actually thrive and succeed. And so
Sure.
before you go, I want you to share with the audience some projects or businesses or whatever you're working on and how they can support you in doing that.
I am currently working on trying to do tutoring services for students.
Great.
Um, so I brought this up to my admin, that I think tutoring should be a major part of helping students to be more successful because they really need that. And we currently have the Keystone Review coming up soon that was just approved. It was something we did in previous years. So I'm trying to find out how to give incentives to students to kind of encourage them because they've kind of been down since COVID because they're getting back into school and it's really, really hard for them to kind of readjust. So I would really want some support in that, trying to find, get snacks, provide things for them so that they can, feel like they're really a part of a community that really supports them and want them to be successful.
Mhm. Well, I'm going to make sure that everyone stays connected with you. For those that are watching, you see Mahalia's information on the screen. You can follow her on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and I'll also include a link in the show notes for those that are listening. But be sure to screenshot this and share it with those that you know so that they can show support in Mahalia's upcoming services with the tutoring. I think that is very much so needed. Thank you once again for joining me. I hope to stay connected moving forward because I know that you are
Sure.
working on a lot of great things.
For sure.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you. You're welcome.